So Jimmy, quickly, let's go back to you. I believe SCRS is really involved in training, knowledge, and support. So I would like you to touch on that. For sites, there must be an overwhelming amount of time and effort that goes into training on these new technologies. And I believe a lot of the cost of that training is uncompensated or maybe in some cases partially compensated. What are you hearing from sites about those costs and how they're impacting the sites, and maybe give some insights on what you think sponsor companies can do to help?
Absolutely. A lot of the issue we see with training on decentralized trials comes down to volume and variety, right? There simply are more trainings and training programs being asked of the sites than ever before, because there's a lot of new technology, to everyone's point, being implemented onto these clinical trials. And again, that gets at that volume and variety there. We're seeing different technologies, even within the same pharmaceutical companies or CROs, across different trials being asked of them to train. But not only that, the sites are also having to train patients to use these technologies more than they ever have had to do before. And training has always been something that has, like you had mentioned, Ed, uncompensated or undercompensated there. And it starts to get at the fact that this is taking up more of the site's time, right? They're having to spend time training and learning these technologies and incorporating them into their practices. And that takes away from some of the other trial-related tasks that they would much rather be doing, like recruiting and treating patients, right? And screening patients into the study. Then I think a lot of what can be done here from a site perspective on alleviating some of this burden is compensation for this training. Recognize that you're asking them to use a piece of technology that is not part of their cost of doing business. Bottom line, this is something new that you're asking them to do that they may never have seen before, right? Or they've only seen it once or twice, or maybe they have used an e-source solution or an e-reg solution before, e-consent, whatever you want to call it, telemedicine, anything, but they haven't used that particular one. To Brad's point, right? There's hundreds and hundreds of suppliers out there across these different solutions, and some of them are very specialized in the offerings that they have, coupled with the homegrown solutions of our sponsor and CRO partners as well, right? So compensating them for this real time, right? Sites, you need to understand what that time looks like and how to cost for that, and pass that along to the sponsors and CROs, and they should in turn pay for it. But I think recognizing a lot of the training that has been done in the past, or education or knowledge and experience, or some combination thereof, and again, recognizing the value that has, and some in instances where that's appropriate, accepting that as necessary knowledge and training for that technology. This has been something that we have advocated for and talked about for a long time, right? Just like budgets and contracts, training's been on the agenda for the summits since their inception. So that's a really big one there, is taking a step back, not looking at it from a checkbox perspective, and recognizing this site has used this technology before, maybe not in this specific application, but their staff used it across 200 patients. So they kind of know how to use this e-source solution, right? And maybe just providing some basics gap training or something, a shortened module, something like that, to save the site's time. But recognizing that across industry and those integrations and training can really go a long way for the sites.
Yeah,
and it
seems
seems like.
Do you mind if I add on one point to that?
Yes,
sorry
please.
To interrupt. The e-reg. So it made me think of a situation that's just happened this week. So we have the e-reg, which is, a CRA can access remotely, but being asked to duplicate our efforts into a trial master file of a system that's being deployed at the sponsor level. So now you've got double the work that a site has to do, and a threat basically that we won't be able to do any more studies if we don't do that. So that's a perfect example where we've just added extra work on a site when it wasn't necessary. So I actually say the training has to go back also to potentially, whether it's the CRAs or project managers, to be aware of the solutions that the sites are actually deploying, so that they know there are options, and then to have an idea of which ones they can grant approval to deviate from their current rollout of what they've decided to do for the protocol.
And Carrie, Donna asked, have you worked with any sponsors that have embedded staff at your site to basically help with things like data entry or other tasks to help relieve your burden? And anything you've heard about that?
For sure. I'm part of a large organization, Hypercore International, and I do know that some of those sites do deploy. I think it's been very valuable when they've had turnover and or a ramp up of work. I think some of the biggest challenges at a site also is managing the ebbs and flows of research. And so you can't predict, you might have one study delayed and another study started at the same time. Now you've got all the extra work and not enough staff in that moment to manage that change, with that delay in that trial. And so it is great to have these options. And I see it mostly used for recruitment support and or, as you say, stated, data management. So if that is something that can be offered and sites are in need of it, I think it's a great solution.
Yeah, I'd offer a small counterpoint. We had we had an experience where we had a sponsor who was pretty insistent. We had actually enrolled so much. It was someone to help, with some of the data entry and cleaning up some data. And if you guys are really interested, somebody can hit me on LinkedIn later. But it was a extremely bad experience, in both instances. And we're talking about things that reflected very poorly on us as a site. I mean, in some ways, this is like a small example of what DCT, some of the questions DCT brings, is you're bringing in someone maybe you don't know, you've not really vetted them. It's very challenging because they're representing your site or your PI. So you have to be very, very careful there. So I got burned very, very badly. It is an epic tale. And so I'm not going to share it here, but I think it's something we still have to be a little bit wary of. And I think to go back to talking about retention at sites, I mean, I feel like company culture at a site level is huge. It's like a really big differentiator between successful sites and sites that just kind of chug along and don't really get anywhere. So I think you have to be very conscious of that as well. I mean, I love the idea. Personally, it just has not worked out well for me at this stage.